Good evening. This is Satan's Trilogy and Chapter 4. And this will be reading 35. Esther's locker was a bit farther down the hallway than Raven's, and so they lost contact with each other. Esther opened her locker and grabbed her helmet. Taking the books out of her bag, she piled them onto the upper shelf. Esther had managed to do all of her assignments while in class. In fact, Esther had already read and studied the classroom's manuals online and over the internet. In China, she had taken many college classes to keep herself occupied, and the classes at Grant High didn't even reach the level of excellence that Esther had already achieved. Esther was in school for the experience of being a high school senior and not for an education. Her biggest goal was to attend the senior prom. This was something her dad had wanted Esther to experience. Raven was at the students' parking lot, standing around the motorcycles, admiring all of them. Esther arrived and said, "Have you been on a motorcycle before?" "Yes, several times. I love the wind in my face and my hair blowing." Raven smiled at Esther, then continued to study the various motorcycles. "This bike is mine. It's in great condition, low miles, mechanically sound, and I think it looks awesome. In China, the Ninja is the bike of choice for getting around on busy, narrow streets. My cousin told me that I can bring this bike back to him in 6 months, and he will give me back what I paid for it, so long as I keep the mileage low. At that time, I am not certain what I'll do. I love this bike, but perhaps I'll buy another, newer one." Esther was looking at the Ninja and ran her fingers over the seat. She paused and looked up at Raven. "Most of my life I have ridden a motorcycle. It's the cheapest way to get around, and in most countries, the easiest." Laughing to herself, she glanced at Raven and added, "I have a Mustang in the shop, so I'm not certain what I'll do." Esther gave Raven a big smile and said, "Are you ready?" Raven looked at Esther with confidence and said, "I was born ready." She then giggled just a bit. "I'll have to keep the helmet, but you'll be fine. Just hold tight around my waist." Esther jumped into the bike and started it. Then Raven straddled the bike, hugging Esther closely from behind. Esther took off quickly and didn't say a word. Obeying all the street lights to avoid being pulled over, Esther made certain to come to a complete stop at every stop sign and intersection, especially before turning right against a red light. Within minutes, they pulled into Noah's Diner parking lot and parked the bike. Raven jumped off and stood back waiting for Esther to turn off the bike and park it. As Esther removed her helmet, she asked Raven how she liked the ride. "So what do you think about being a passenger on a Ninja?" Raven had a very large smile on her face, so Esther commented, "You look like you had the time of your life." Raven finally responded after letting the excitement subside. "Esther, it is so fantastic to feel the wind blowing onto your face. I love it. I wonder if I could ever learn to ride one of these." Raven was so thrilled and excited she couldn't take her eyes off the Ninja. Raven had a thought that sparked a quick question. "Do they make them in black?" Waiting eagerly for an answer, Raven watched Esther. "Are you kidding me?" Esther was thrilled to see Raven's interest in learning to ride a Ninja and wanted to encourage her. "This morning 3 black Ninjas pulled in behind me at school. Each was a new Ninja 650R, and they looked awesome. I know the guys that ride them. We met yesterday for just a short time. They must be seniors, which is why we didn't see them when we finally reached the student parking." Suddenly, Esther decided to go back to the original question. Black is a very popular color for the Ninja. Having glanced around the parking lot, Esther said, Let's go inside and see who's here. Raven followed, though she was still excited from the bike ride. As they approached the diner, a very special 1993 Toyota Camry pulled into the parking lot. Chris York was driving. He waved to Esther and Raven as he drove by and pulled into an empty parking spot. While the Camry was 18 years old, it looked to be in mint condition. No doubt the car had been given a lot of loving attention. The paint was iridescent green that changed to dark purple as it went by, and the wheels were chrome Asante wheels, custom made, very expensive and worth every penny. Quickly jumping out of his car and catching up with Esther and Raven, Chris was obviously excited. I love this school. With no class during the 7th hour, it just doesn't get any better, not to mention the new scholarship fund. Chris stopped in front of the girls and asked proudly, "So what do you think of my Camry?" Raven spoke first. "That is the most awesome paint job that I have ever seen." "Can they do something like that in black?" Raven paused, waiting for a reply. Chris said, "What?" "I don't know. I guess so." Raven started to laugh. "Chris, I'm joking. Your car is absolutely the hottest paint that I have ever seen. It must have cost a small fortune. I'm surprised that you put such an awesome paint on an old Camry." Chris couldn't help boasting a little more. "My grandmother gave me that car 2 years ago. She only had 60,000 miles on it. Some Camrys last 300,000 miles and more. I think this car will be my transportation until I'm an old man in my 30s. Raven laughed. "Good luck on that one." Esther laughed at both and said, "Chris, that is an awesome paint job, and I love the Camry. I was born the year that car was built." "So was I." "That sort of adds to the car's appeal, doesn't it?" said Chris. "Besides, my grandmother is gone now, and this car is the last thing she gave me. She loved the car, and I do too." Looking about the parking lot, Esther said, "Let's go inside and see if Day and the others are here." All three turned to the diner and walked to the entrance. Chris ran up to the door and opened it. "Allow me, ladies." "Thank you, Chris. That is very mannerly of you," said Raven. "Great-looking car, a fantastic dresser, and manners too. Chris, you have impressed me," said Raven as she entered the diner. Esther saw Day and the others at a large table at the far end of the restaurant. "There they are." Day spotted Esther at the door and quickly ran up to greet her. "Sister, I am so glad you're here." Day gave Esther a hug and kissed her on the cheek. Then, turning to Raven and Chris as they walked in, Day gave both a hug and then a kiss on the cheek. Speaking to Esther and Raven, Day said, "Come on, we have a table over here." She then turned to Chris and said, "Don't move." Proud and excited that everyone had shown up, Day grabbed Esther and Raven, placing one on each side of her, and pulled them across the room. It was a very short distance, but Day ushered them anyway. Chris stood at the entrance and waited. At the table, Day said, "Give me 1 second." She turned around and quickly returned to Chris. Grabbing his arm, Day said, "Come on, Chris. This party needs a well-dressed man." Day quickly escorted Chris back to the table, holding onto his upper arm. Chris was blushing with such an attractive girl holding on to his arm. The table could easily hold the 7 classmates, but before Esther, Raven, and Chris could sit down, Day spoke up. "I want everyone to understand that sitting together at this table bonds us as a family. We keep our conversations between us, and we help each other when needed. Eve, Helen, and Chris have been in my life for as long as I can remember, and I love them dearly. They are my lifelong best friends. This is Esther. I love her dearly too. I have asked her to be my sister. Esther is Chinese. This is her first semester at Grant High, and like all of us, She will graduate with us at the end of the school year. Moving to stand alongside Raven, Day said, Raven and I met at my father's grocery store. She has just moved here. From the moment I saw Raven, I knew that she would fit into our circle of friends. Last but not least, Day looked at Chris. We all know Chris. He is the school's best-dressed man. He creates fashion and does not follow it. He has always been true to himself, something that we can all appreciate. Besides, Chris is Esther's friend, and I happen to know that when Esther calls someone a friend, then they are someone special. I think this table could use a man. Chris is the best man I know. I would like to invite him to sit at our table. Day turned to Chris. What do you say, Chris? Chris looked a bit perplexed. He thought that he had already been invited to the table. Perhaps Day thought Chris needed to understand he was taking on a small family of friends. So Chris looked around the table. Day was a very attractive Korean. Eve had Hispanic heritage. Helen and Chris had very fair complexions, and they had very girlish faces that were attractive. And all four wore their black clothes and makeup in a manner that enhanced their features and looked good in them. Then Chris quickly gazed at Raven and Esther. Both were tall and attractive in their own way, with Esther having a confidence that could easily intimidate others, and Raven wearing the black gothic look and doing it well. Chris turned to Day. Are you kidding me? You are all beautiful, smart, and confident. I'm in. Chris pulled out his chair and sat down. Everyone laughed and welcomed him, saying something simultaneously. Chris could only catch the last thing said by Day. Let's all share a minute history of our lives with each other. Eve, Helen, Chris, and I know each other very well, but we want to know something about you three. So let's all share. I'll go first so you see what I mean. Everyone was listening today. She was not only expressive in her speech, but also very articulate. So when she finished with expressing her suggestion, they all relaxed a bit, waiting for her 1-minute life story. Chris, you're wearing a watch. You be the timekeeper. You say start and stop after 60 seconds for all of us, and then I'll do the same for you. Day watched Chris agree with her and turn his eyes to the watch on his hand. Chris was wearing a very large black Casio watch, and as he took it off, he commented, This watch has a second hand that I can view 60 seconds with. Day's facial expression changed to a more solemn look, and she spoke. My mother was pregnant with me when they escaped North Korea and came to this country. My parents fled after all of her relatives were arrested and sent to concentration camps. My father and mother quickly hid and escaped certain death. I was born and raised here. My mother died from cancer 6 years ago. My father taught me Korean, but he knows we can never return to what he knew as home. I have been asked by my father to study hard and to succeed in this country. I look Korean, but I am American, and he has a difficulty understanding that. For 12 years, I have applied myself in school, and now with the scholarships offered at school, I will be able to follow my dream and become a doctor. That's 1 minute, said Chris. And that was the end of reading 35. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, please take care.